When Dishonored 2 was released in 2012, it was heralded as being a new IP with an interesting setting amidst the countless sequels and stale ideas. And now that Dishonored 2 has finally been released, the series has fallen in the same trappings as the games that it once stood above. Dishonored 2 happens about 15 years after the conspiracy and coup in the first game. So right away we can put Dunwall somewhere in between Brazil and the Middle East in terms of political stability. Because guess what? Another coup happens in Dishonored 2. Depending on which character you choose, either Corvo Attano or Emily Caldwin must take back the throne from Delilah Copperspoon and save whoever you didn't choose as the player. I won't sugarcoat it, the game starts off on a shaky, rushed pace. There's so much wrong about the beginning of the game, I made a separate video on it. The quick version is it tries to do too much, too soon without setting up the plot properly. In order to take out Delilah and make Dunwall great again, you go to the city of Karnaca, which is saturated in corruption, poverty, and magic. You do this because apparently Delilah is immortal, which is something I actually missed in my first playthrough, and I guess there's also a serial killer and a trail of breadcrumbs to follow. Yeah, unfortunately the story never really recovers from the poor start. The characters are garbage and the dialogue is poorly written. It even has some Sonic Adventure 2 moments with the sloppy dub.
I'm not here for treatment. I'm looking for Anton Sokolov.
You're not even good enough to be
I'll make you eat those words!
It's really a shame too, because Arcane Studios actually did a wonderful job building a believable world with incredibly detailed and interesting lore, only to fuck it up with a poor execution of the main story. The villains honestly are pretty solid, even though most of them don't get enough time to actually develop and become anything great, but they're not bad. The problem rests with the main cast, and it's made up of 3 interweaving issues. The first is the lackluster writing itself. Most of the main cast is devoid of any personality, which makes it kinda hard to give a shit about what happens to them. Without spoiling too much, there was one reveal in the late game that should have been an enlightening twist, but it practically came out of nowhere and had as much impact on me as a fun fact in a random Tinder bio. The second problem has to do with the supporting characters. Even though they're not necessarily bad in of themselves, it's just they can't have much character because they're dealing with either Emily or Corvo rather than a customizable avatar. They're completely different in the story, so every side character treats them like, "Hey, you, yeah you, with the mask and the motivations. I need some help." It's even more unusual considering that the story seems to be tailored for Emily as the main character, but I guess the developers didn't want the assets of Dishonored 1 to go to waste. Which brings me to the third problem. It would be easier to insert different characters if there wasn't a fucking morality X and Y graph. A supporting cast member could either be talking to a former empress or the protector of the empress who's trying to save his daughter. And either one of them could either be a murderous sociopath or the world's most out-of-touch pacifist. But since they're supporting cast, they still have to support the main character, regardless if it makes any sense or not. While games using a a blue and red morality system doesn't normally bother me, Dishonored's is a double-edged sword. On one hand, some of the pacifist options for the main villains are incredibly satisfying, especially for a revenge tale. On the other, they can kinda be fucked up. Let's use Jindosh as an example. This man is a genius who cares about his intellect above all else. Your pacifist option uses electroshock therapy to make him stupid, and not just like has trouble with basic algebra stupid. You torture this guy retarded is what you do. And don't get me wrong, Jindosh is a dickhead and had it coming, but don't dress it up like you're taking the high road. A little awareness would fix this, but Dishonored's mindset is still only killing is the bad thing in this game. On top of that, not all the pacifist routes are as satisfying as they were in the first game, and this includes Delilah's, and makes for a really disappointing ending. So the story may suck, but the gameplay of Dishonored 2 is a damn good time. The first-person stealth works incredibly well as a balancing mechanic. Getting overwhelmed is a very real possibility if you get too reckless, and these enemies are merciless. They'll gladly shoot you in the back, or even their friends if they're taken hostage. But the real draw to the Dishonored series are the powers. They really open up the game to a ton of possibilities. There's still freezing time and possessing people if you chose Corvo, but my personal favorite is the linking ability that Emily has. With it, you can easily take out whole rooms of guards with just one attack. You can also do this. Corvo has the better powers all around, but that doesn't really matter now that there's a new game plus that carries your previous character over with the option to get all the powers regardless of who you initially chose. Which begs the question, why in the Outsider's Crooked Cock are there two characters to begin with? But hell, you don't even need to use powers to do over-the-top stuff. Throwing objects at guards will put them in a vulnerable animation so you can rush in and deal the final blow. Pro tip, make sure you have a witty one-liner depending on what you throw. For this next technique, you really have to use your head. You know what they say, 2 heads are better than 1. I wish I was dead. One thing I thoroughly enjoyed was Dishonored 2's level design. Most stealth games require you to move past conveniently placed objects to avoid being spotted, but Dishonored 2 is more vertical than most stealth games. You can reach high ledges with the blink/far reach power, or quickly move past an enemy with it. This makes for a refreshing stealth mechanic that prevents the gameplay from slowing to a crawl while making you feel like a steampunk Batman. With that said, you can miss quite a bit if you move too fast. And that's a shame because Arcane Studios' world is amazing. They can be a bit small for an open world environment, but they more than make up for that with the immense amount of detail. On top of the great level design, the city of Karnaca is a wonderful setting that doesn't really feel like anywhere I've ever played before, with the exception of the first Dishonored. The Clockwork Mansion is one of the best areas I've played in recent memory. The environment shifts around and has a ton of hidden areas. It's easy to see why a lot of people think this area is the high point of the campaign. The time traveling level is also cool and unique, but it loses points for me by not doing anything with the tool after the level, because using your powers with that device could make for some fun and interesting moments. With that said, the trash morality system drags the gameplay to a screeching halt. The X and Y axis from hell takes into account how many people you've killed along with how many times you've been spotted. So if you're going for a low chaos run, you'll get acquainted with the quick load button really quick, hence the name, because running away or fighting non-lethally still counts against you. If I had to nitpick the combat, blocking can be a little overpowered because your guard never gets broken, so taking 2 or 3 of these mechanical soldiers becomes possible assuming you're patient enough. Dishonored 2 is summed up as a fun game that needs a lot more work. It doesn't build off the original game and even has the same glitches as the first. It's a lazy sequel that doesn't have anything close to an engaging story, but again, gameplay-wise, it's still quite a lot of fun. Dishonored 2 gets a C+. Alright guys, there's the review I promised a week and a half ago. I know I'm a little late on the video, but Christmas happened. I hung out with my family and friends, you know, all that stuff. I really do want to get into a legitimate schedule, but that hasn't happened so far, so it's basically gonna be a new video every week, tentatively. Well, yeah, that's kind of it. Later.